Another Superman on another Earth was once a hero turned destroyer. Now, our Superman on our Earth has to show John Henry Irons who he really is.
You need to show them who you are.
What did you think of episode 8, Holding the Wrench? Let's talk about it. Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is my spoiler talk review for Superman and Lois, episode 8, Holding the Wrench. Did you like that prop? Put very little thought into it. So, what did you think of this episode? I thought there were a lot of really interesting things going on. I think they did a great job with Lois's character arc and what she was going through in this episode and how it connected her to John Henry Irons, making a moment like this,
John, I know about Natalie,
infinitely more powerful than a moment like this.
Why did you say that name?
What did you think of this episode? Let's talk about it. Gotta say a huge thank you to C. Allen, a brand new patron of mine on Patreon. Thank you so much for jumping on board and supporting Durbania. Your support means more to me than you realize. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much. If you want to support Durbania, I have the link to my Patreon down in the description.
I lost my temper,
you almost died
and I am worried that if I can't pull it together,
because you were reckless and stupid.
I'm at risk of hurting someone I really love.
First, let's talk about Lois Lane, because I think they did a great job overall with her story and making this episode even more compelling. So we do open with her talking to a therapist, and she's talking about how she lost her temper on a Kent. She's feeling regret for having said these words that now she can't take back. Now, what this did is it set up Lois's journey and her character arc, and what we find out that not only is she dealing with in this episode, but really she's been dealing with subconsciously this entire time. And it does a great job because it takes this emotional journey that Lois is on and it connects her to John Henry Irons and the emotional journey that he's on. And so the way they bring that connection together with this is incredibly interesting, and it forges a new bond between her and Jonathan by the end of this episode. So I really feel like overall this was a fantastic setup, and in fact, I found it more compelling on a second watch. It was very compelling on the first watch, because on the first watch, I'm wondering, who does she explode at? When does she explode? And what would cause her to lose her temper like that? And so I was really watching, and I was really paying attention to everything, because I just wanted to see what could lead Lois to something like that. And so we get to this reveal that when her twins were 18 months old, she was pregnant. It was a girl. They named her Natalie, and Clark and her were devastated when she miscarried.
Is this the part where you tell me the miscarriage wasn't my fault? Because the guilt that I feel is real.
And that type of guilt and condemnation that comes from that has been subconsciously there this entire time.
I never stopped working.
That's not why you lost your child.
You don't know that.
A majority of miscarriages are caused by a genetic issue.
And they did a good job with the emotions of it because she just really wanted to meet Natalie.
Your miscarriage wasn't because of something you did or didn't do. It was something that happened to you.
So, now as I'm watching this the second time, and she and Jonathan team up, which I thought was cool, the two Kents that don't have superpowers, they're teaming up, and I felt good for Jonathan, right? Because he's been feeling a little left out, a little powerless. Well, she and Jonathan team up, and they go investigate the RV that belonged to John Henry Irons. And as they go in there, they see the wedding pictures of John and Lois from that Earth, and they're like, well, that's trippy. But then they find the daughter. They find that the daughter is named Natalie. And so here she is, possibly seeing for the first time ever pictures of Natalie. It's not the Natalie she and Clark would have had on this Earth, but she wanted to meet that Natalie so bad, and this is it. Like, this is the closest she's gonna get. So you see that emotion, and it takes those feelings that had been there in the subconscious and brings them more to the forefront.
Sorry, I didn't get to meet you, Sid. You seem really cool.
When Jonathan goes back in the RV on his own, and he decides to look for weapons because he's feeling powerless. Jordan is powerful, Clark is powerful. We got this dude with this super suit from a whole nother universe in the multiverse. He wanted to feel protected in some fashion, like he could protect himself and take some control.
You and Jordan basically are weapons. I am the only one in this house that is completely
unarmed.
So he went in there to try to steal one of those weapons, which triggers an alarm in the RV and locks it down and brings out like these guns that are about to shoot him. And then you have Lois, who can't get into the RV. She's screaming with all she's got because the AI recognized Lois Lane as one of its main users, but it can't hear her over the alarm. It can't hear her outside. There is nothing she can do. So she gets out that little device and calls for Clark, and he comes flying in. And seriously, the bullets were already in motion as he ripped off the door and got in there. 1 second later, and Jonathan would have been gone. Now that scene was well done, visually stunning with the slow motion, and then he looks up and he burns all the guns with his eyes. But to me, the true intensity of the scene comes after the scene. It comes when they're in the kitchen, and this is where Lois loses it. This is what we've been building to after she was talking to the therapist. And I love what Jonathan said.
Because I was 1 second away from being dead. And Mom couldn't do anything, and you almost didn't even make it in time.
And that's powerful because it's what he felt in that moment, adding to those feelings of powerlessness that he has been feeling, why he wants to protect himself. So it's kind of like the suspense of that scene. Like, I knew Jonathan was going to live, but I feel like in Jonathan talking about what he felt after the fact, it added more suspense to that scene. He was 1 second away from dying. He just wants some way that he can help take care of himself and take some measure of control. It's what Alfred said in Batman v Superman.
A feeling of powerlessness.
Okay, it's not turning Jonathan cruel, but it is those feelings of powerlessness, and so he wanted a weapon. But this is where Lois just absolutely loses it. She loses it because she was scared of losing Jonathan. She was scared, and like the way she said it, right?
You almost died! Not because you were unarmed, because you were reckless and stupid! And if you had died, the only person that would have been to blame is yourself!
And those words are definitely coming from that place of her feeling like it was nobody's fault but her own that she miscarried.
It would have been because of me. I can't lose another child because of me.
It's really not her fault at all, but she's held on to those feelings of guilt. So she needs to learn to forgive herself. The therapist says you need to go through the proper grieving and allow yourself whatever time it takes to go through it. Because sometimes the only way out is through. In Psalm 23, it says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. It's funny, rod and staff, it sounds like punishing things, like whack, but that's not what it is at all. It's the tools to guide the sheep, to guide them safely through to the other side with the still waters and the green pastures, to that table that the Lord prepares for us. So that's what it's talking about. It's those things to comfort and those things to guide us through. God doesn't leave us when we're going through our darkest times. The other thing is, none of that pain we go through is wasted. And Romans 8:28 says that he makes all things work together for the good of those who love him. Now, when you look at this episode, you see that begin to happen. As she accepts going through that process of grieving, it becomes this connection point. None of that pain and all that stuff she's been through is wasted. When John Henry Irons has Superman on the ground with a kryptonite spear over him,
You're letting him kill Martha.
sorry, wrong movie.
John, I know about Natalie!
Why did you say that name?
He was about to take an innocent life based on something that had happened in another world. Sure, similar things are beginning to build. Similar things are beginning to happen now. And he wants to save Lois again. But our Lois Lane is able to connect with John Henry Irons in a unique way.
Please, I see the anger in your eyes. It's covering something I can relate to. The torture that comes from wondering if you failed. And it's not your fault.
So here's an interesting thought. Psalm 23 says, my cup overflows. Look at this healing that she's now beginning to experience as she allows herself to go through this process. That healing, that cup is overflowing, and she's able to connect with John Henry Irons on this level. And because she's able to connect with him, that healing she's experiencing, she's able to start him on that process of healing, and he surrenders the kryptonite spear. And as her cup overflows, you have this amazing moment where she and Jonathan connect at the end.
And you want to help out, you want to save the world, and all you can do is just stand there, holding the wrench. And I know the fear of being vulnerable. And I will teach you some ways to handle that.
And they have such a great connection here at the end where those painful words maybe should have created a rift. But now we have that healing overflowing and it's repairing and even strengthening this relationship.
What happened on my world is already happening on this one. The Kryptonians are here, and you joining them is the last I'll know to fall before it all goes to hell.
Dude, this stuff between Superman and John Henry Irons in this episode is absolutely epic. For instance, listen to that line again.
What happened on my world is already happening on this one. The Kryptonians are here.
The Kryptonians are here. I mean, go back to this moment.
There's two of them.
That's when Superman and Derek are fighting, and when he and Derek are fighting, it's like this moment of recognition when he realizes there's more than one Kryptonian. Now listen to these things Derek says to Superman during this fight.
She resurrected me, Kal-El. You're not alone anymore. I'm already dead.
Now what this takes me back to is the show Smallville. Because in the show Smallville, you do have the Phantom Zone, and in the Phantom Zone are the phantoms of Kryptonians, where their corporeal forms are destroyed and their phantoms are cast into the Phantom Zone. And at the end of season 5, Lex Luthor is taken by Brainiac and prepared. His body is given all the gifts and powers of a Kryptonian, and then he is possessed by the phantom of General Zod.
You have your father's eyes. Hello, Kal-El.
And it makes me think that's exactly what Morgan Edge is doing here, because it is very much so mirroring that incredible plot line out of Smallville. Like, if all of that is true, I mean, that line where Derek says, I'm already dead, that could be the Phantom speaking, like, because his corporeal form is destroyed, I'm already dead. And so we have this idea that Kal-El is not alone anymore. Somehow, Kryptonians are arriving on Earth. So Edge is using X-Kryptonite to give people powers. So how are they getting the consciousness, the phantoms of Kryptonians, to possess the humans? But I feel like that is exactly what is happening.
She thinks that Morgan Edge has found a way to transfer alien sentience into human hosts.
Because John Henry Irons is talking about how when the Kryptonians arrived on his Earth, Superman aligned with them. Now that's kind of interesting, because then it raises this question. If the Superman of that Earth was a hero up until that moment where he was the black-suited Superman who came down and was destroying Metropolis with those 4 others, is that Kal-El? Or is that the phantom of another Kryptonian that has possessed him? And how would Edge have gotten Superman to that point to be possessed? So there's a lot of very interesting questions that are being raised, and I'm liking that. What's happening on our Earth has already happened in his world. He couldn't save his daughter. He couldn't save Lois in his Earth. So he's going to save Lois here and now in this Earth any way that he can. And so even though Superman is good at this time, because of the Superman he experienced in that other world, he thinks truly Superman must have no emotion and no feelings towards human beings at all. And so now it is up to our Superman, our Kal-El, to show John who he really is. And I feel like they do such a great job with that in this episode, because finally we are introduced to 7734. You remember that? Earlier in the season, when Sam and John meet for the first time, and he gives him those Superman-shaped dog tags, and it looked like it said hell on the back until you turn it upside down and it says 7734. And there's that look of recognition on Sam's face. So on their world, there was a 7734, and in our Earth, there is a 7734. It's Section 5, where they build all these Kryptonian weapons. So, as they're trying to question John, you have this moment where Sam is talking to Superman about, well, look, there's a war coming, obviously, and he knows about it, and we don't. So I'm going to try to get him to talk. If I can't, unfortunately, we'll have to torture him. Like, you know, Sam doesn't want to do that, but Sam wants this information, and Superman says, no, we're not doing that. And I love that, because what it's showing us is Superman's compassion to John Henry Irons. Look at this. This is an opportunity for Superman to view him as an enemy and view him as a threat, because he finds out in this episode that John was married to Lois on that other Earth. They had a daughter named Natalie on that other Earth. It could be so easy for Superman to feel threatened by this, to feel fear because of this, to view him as an enemy because of this. Instead, Superman sees this as, I'm understanding John's perspective, and he has compassion on John. So, when you have that one soldier who really isn't a soldier, or at least isn't anymore, he's been experimented on by Edge. Perhaps now a Kryptonian phantom has possessed his body, and he kidnaps John and he takes him to 7734. So when Sam says, if you go to 7734, Soups, you probably won't be coming back, Superman doesn't even hesitate. He rushes down there because that's who he is. And when he goes down there and fights, it's amazing the similarities between this fight sequence and Batman v Superman. I mean, you got the kryptonite gas pellet. You have the Martha moment. Only here, it's the Natalie moment. Now, yes, I think the Martha moment's cheesy, but I think there's something good in the core of it, and I have a video that dives into that more deeply. I'll talk about that later. But this one did a really good job making that less cheesy, showing us Lois's pain and what she's been going through, and how she can reach John because of what she's been going through, and how she connects with him. Now, I look at this scene and think about this. Superman showed John who he really was. He put his life on the line for John. And now John was about to kill him, and when Lois connects with him and says, I know this Superman won't turn on us. I know this Superman cares about humanity. He trusts her. And that to me was this well done and powerful moment as he surrenders the kryptonite spear. There's another opportunity for division to get in, and I feel like they did a great job. It's this moment here between Sam and Clark.
I hope for the best, but it's my job to prepare for the worst, even when it comes to you.
He's doing what he needs to do, and that is to prepare for the worst. And apparently, there's other Kryptonians arriving. So it ain't wrong that he's developed these kryptonite weapons or stockpiled all of this kryptonite. And he does love Clark. It's his son-in-law. It's the father of his grandchildren. And I love what he says about earning back trust.
Trust goes both ways.
I know. And I know I have some work to do to regain yours.
It's powerful because we see he really is hoping for the best. And even though, yeah, Superman's a little bit hurt by what Sam has done, I feel like you can sense in both characters here, they want to work towards trust and not becoming enemies. So another place where a wall of division could come in, I really feel like you see, no, there's no wall of division here. They are going to work towards trust. And just as Clark worked to understand John's perspective, he's going to work to understand Sam's perspective. So I'm very curious to see how that's going to develop. But one of the ultimate ways that Superman was able to extend trust to John was to grant him freedom.
We're gonna need all the help we can get. This is a show of trust.
Now, this scene irritates me. It irritates me because here is John on the Kent farm picking up his RV. It's Superman lands there. Okay, I love you, Tyler Hoechlin. You're doing an amazing job as Superman. But let me just say this. There's not much of a difference between how Clark Kent looks and acts and how Superman looks and acts. Christopher Reeve made Clark Kent act so different from that Superman that you could understand why nobody would recognize Clark as Superman. It's not so in this version. And it drives me nuts that here is John on Clark's farm with Lois right there, staring at Superman after he's already met Clark and he still isn't recognizing him? Come on. I like, though, what this has to be setting up. This has to be setting up a big reveal where he finds out Clark Kent is Superman. That Superman is married to Lois on this Earth. And I'm excited to see what that revelation is going to do for John. Like, what is that going to do to him when he figures that out? And I really hope we're building towards him becoming Steel, the hero that we saw him in the Reign of the Superman. If you haven't seen that, that's actually a really good movie, but I really do hope that we are seeing him building towards becoming Steel with that awesome hammer and the awesome suit he builds and has built and fighting with Superman. I hope that's what we build to, as well as, like I said in my last video, seeing him being a hero who maybe helps save Superman from that fate. Because I'm convinced, and I could be wrong, so we'll see. I'm convinced the Superman on that other Earth was possessed by a Kryptonian phantom. And I'm guessing that's the goal of Edge, to get Superman, that domino, to fall. And what it shows us is what Superman really has to guard against. We had 2 episodes in a row that ended with Superman angry and reining that anger in. But it's more than that. Because one of the things the Bible says is that a root of bitterness is a corrupting force. Like, it really does corrupt us. And so It says, don't let the sun go down on your anger, meaning don't ruminate on that anger. Don't dwell and meditate on it and allow it to become that corrupting root of bitterness. So it's not just anger in the moment that Superman has to battle against. It's bitterness that he has to battle against. He can't allow that stuff to take root. So we really see how deep this has to go for Superman and how much he had to really show John who he really is. So I thought that was an incredibly powerful message where instead of seeing walls come up, we see compassion extended all throughout this episode. So what did you think of this episode? Are you looking forward to what's coming? Let's talk about that in the comments. While you're there, hit that subscribe button to become a Durbanian and hit that bell by the subscribe button. And if you real quick want to see me talk about something similar, the video that has just popped up here on the screen, it's the Zack Snyder's Justice League theological analysis where I get deeper into that root of bitterness from Batman v Superman, how it corrupted Batman, but how faith transformed him in Zack Snyder's Justice League. So great video. I had a blast putting that together. Be sure to check that out. Also be sure to check out my Superman and Lois playlist and my other reviews. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.